Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to view Go Go Loser Ranger Season 1, Episodes 1 through 4. So, with the way that this show is put together currently to the second this recording, we come to find that this show does not have English audio, meaning when the characters are talking, you're not hearing English words come out of them. Because, of course, we come to find with any brand new anime that there has to be some time before a show is to justify dubbing a show in other languages, meaning that a show does not have quite enough money to justify like having it be in English right off the bat. So, uh, right now the show is only available with English subtitles, but I was to go on and watch this show multiple times because, of course, I wanted to support the show. But then also, I realized that at some point, the more viewership that it gets, at some point, it'll be dubbed in English. And really, I want to go on and watch the show again in English to catch any little bit of anything that I missed, but then also to just rewatch it because I really, really enjoyed this show. This show is straight up easily thumbs up in for me. This is to be such an epic Power Rangers, and I say Power Rangers because it has the word even Sentai in it, and it is to, I guess, be approved by the people who are to have gone on and done Power Rangers to be like, hey man, go ahead and do your thing. Um, and this is a much darker Power Rangers story, but yeah, this is something interesting here. So, we have me want to compare this show to the the boys or an anime called Tiger and Bunny, which is also dubbed in English, and uh Gotcha Man Crowds, because it is to be a similar Power Rangers anime, but it's not actually like Power Rangers, but it's pretty dang close. I had reviewed the whole first season of Gotcha Man Crowds. You can check out what that show actually is and see if you want to go on and go to like an anime go go or something like that and watch Gotcha Man Crowds until maybe Go Go Loser Ranger is available dubbed in English, or maybe you just want to check out Go Go Loser Ranger regardless. That is what it is. But so here is how I'm going to pitch to you this story. So we come to find like a Batman comic book, and Gotham, the Batman city, is to be in complete destruction. The worst that it has ever been. Death, murder, and mayhem all have happened upon this day. And we have, by this long stretch of a day, we have Batman who is looking face to face with Joker, and Batman goes on and instead of putting up his fist to punch, he goes on and puts up his hands to hug the Joker, going on and giving him a $50,000 payout, and is to have Batman tell the Joker, man, like you gave me one heck of a run tonight, like man, like you're of course gonna go to jail, and like I'll give you the money to bail you out and get you a jail out of free card. Or yeah. So like that is to of course be the weirdest sounding Batman comic book you've ever heard of in your life, right? Well, that is to be similar to what this Power Rangers tale is to go on and tell you. So we come to find that the Dragon Keepers, who are to be called the Power Rangers, I guess, in this show, and the Dusters, who are the Mighty Morphin equivalent to the Putties uh, to this show, and they're to have gone on 12 years ago and made a truce between one another, and from those 12 years, gone on and put on a performance, a act of sorts, to have the Power Rangers live the high life and the Dusters go on and be beaten, battered, and possibly killed whenever they are to step out of line, to have us finally come to having one of the Dusters saying, like, okay, enough is enough. I can't take this anymore. Like, people need to know about this ruse. People need to know what's going on. And so the Duster is to finally go on and say that it is to come up with some kind of plan to kill all the Power Rangers and have world domination. And some of the people within the crowds are going on and actually cheering for the villains. We start to see certain characters telling certain Dusters, like, hey, try your best, do what you can, beat them. Because we've seen this tale happen on and on and on to where, like, people are just desperate for a change of pace. People want to go on and finally see the villains win. And so that's where we're seeing our tale unwind here. And the more and more I'm watching this show, I'm like, this has everything that I've ever wanted in a Power Rangers story. Like, we have like the life story of a putty that I've always ever wanted in a Mighty Morphin episode, which sounds goofy and funny, but that's all I've ever wanted. And we also get to where, like, this is a darker Power Rangers story. This is a the boys of the Tiger and Bunny anime uh, kind of approach to a Power Rangers story. Also, Gatchaman Crowds is another uh, anime similar Power Rangers story, which I had gone on to review the whole entire first season of, so you can go ahead and check that out, that video, if you'd like to. But it's just a thing that exists. I'm not trying to promote that video. It's there. But so, Go Go Loser Ranger is such a thumbs up show. It is freaking epic. And there is so many twists and turns, and there is to have me just loving this. Loving it with a capital L. Oh my god. So we come to find that there isn't really a Rita Repulsa or a Lord Zed in this story because the Power Rangers had snuffed them out early on off screen in this story. But then again, at one of the points in these 4 episodes, we come to find that there is some kind of weird, goofy character that I'm trying to figure out if that is to have been the Rita or Lord Zed of this show, or if it was to just be another Duster. So, a little confused about that. But anyways, yeah, so we have this Duster plotting against the Power Rangers, and at some point, we have people going on and helping him out. Just the human race going on. I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe this guy has some good ideas. Or maybe this guy is just strong enough. And so, yeah, so these Dusters are able to mimic anyone. And I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is almost just like the Mighty Morphin putties who can go on and kind of mimic anybody. And also, like, they can kind of have their limbs chopped off at any point, and then they grow back or they come back. And that ends up playing a really good usage in this show. So, yeah, so. Oh man, this show is so good. This is almost close to being like my favorite anime. That's how good it is. It's so weirdly it's probably a very simple story, but man is it so good. Like, Darwin's Game is still forcibly needing to be my favorite anime of all time, but man, is Go Go Loser Ranger pretty dang close. But then there's also some really creative animes, but yeah, like I want to give almost close to like Go Go Loser Ranger, pretty dang close, just like it's up there. Um, because I can go on and probably randomly remember certain animes that I thoroughly loved and enjoyed. But yeah, so if you've possibly seen animes like Tiger and Bunny or Gotcha Man Crowds, then this is for you. So yeah, so let's go on and let's go into full on spoilers. Let's go into every bit and piece of whatever I can remember within this brain. And I do have like cliff notes, not full on notes for these 4 episodes, but I'm really hoping that that'll help me just kind of rush more through these episodes to kind of get this video done so it's not like 3 hours long. Because we have 4 episodes and they're all 20 minutes. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers. I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna turn on my phone, and we'll get the full-on episodes. Cause yeah, like if you're not watching this episode or this show, you need to. Uh, really, because there's no other real new Power Rangers content going on. But man, it's pretty dang close to everything that is everybody has ever wanted from a Power Rangers show. That is to be of a certain age. Because for those of you that wanted a rated R Power Rangers, here you go. For those of you who are to go on and watch or want a Power Ranger show from a different kind of perspective, you're getting that. And like if Bulk and Skull were ever to have their own show, like that is kind of what this feels like. But then again, like we have the Dusters who are kind of just consistently fighting against the Power Rangers. So let me go on and let me get into spoilers. I'll pause here for a second. Okay, firstly, I'm going to go on and say that yes, consistently within the subtitles, the Dusters are either called Fighters or Dusters. But I'm going to go on and call them Dusters because that sounds like a lot more cooler of a name. And I'm going to go on and at some points go on and call the Power Rangers either Dragon Keepers or I'm going to call them red, green, blue, yellow, whatever Rangers, because to really just either mix it up or because it's just easier in my brain to talk about those characters in that manner. And at some point in the show, they're to probably just be called Blue Keeper or Green Keeper or Red Keeper or whichever. And possibly at some points the names are to actually have been said, like for a bulk of the time we have Akabane, the Red Keeper, and he's to be called either Akabane, his name, who he is without the mask, and so yeah. So I'm gonna try to do as best as possible to even pronounce all these names also, whenever they are to really come up in the story. So here's one thing. In the very beginning of episode 1, we of course have this announcer who is calling upon this Sunday showdown at the arena, because we come to find this floating fortress way up top that is to have kind of chains coming down, having us really just understand that the floating fortress is where these villains are going to come down from to face off against our Power Rangers / Dragon Keepers. So we have this announcer who is building up this Sunday's Showdown show and talking about the whole history of the Dragon Keepers against the nefarious monsters / Duster monsters characters. So we had this whole huge build up, and here is to be coming in our main character, who, when he is to be in his human disguise, he doesn't legitimately ever have a real name. At some points, they do go on and call him D, but really, that is to really just say that this character never really had an actual name. But so we go on to have, uh, of course, let's call whenever Fighter D or Duster is to be in human form, I'm just gonna call him D because that'll be easy. So D walks into the arena and he is, of course, to be met with uh, Yumiko and Sakurama. And we have the two of them going on and being excited for this guy to be coming into the arena and is to be giving him papers of this possible hero exam for him to be a part of the Rangers or the Rangers recruitment plan. And D is to go on and be like, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'll be a part of your Ranger force, even though I'm already part of some other kind of community." And we have D who's going on and talking to the two of these people, and we have Yumiko who is to mention that she is to be uh, a part of the Ranger force, who is to be with the Yellow Ranger. She's kind of his like second in command, and she is to mention that she'll be the one kind of protecting the civilians if there ever is to be uh, any real audience who is to go on and be threatened by any of these monstrous beings, and so on and so forth. So D goes on and is to make quick friends, of which somehow or another, and so we further and further more realize that the only reason why D is really here is to really be a part of the show, because he is, of course, to turn into a duster. So we then go into the arena. And so here is when the dusters all come down from the floating fortress, which obviously the floating fortress looks exactly like the Dark Fortress from Power Rangers in Space. It almost looks identical with the exclusion of like certain pieces here and there that are just slightly tweakingly look different, but it's the same freaking thing. It's the same freaking thing. So that's the one cosmetic thing that's like, they couldn't have figured out a different way for that thing to look. There could have been a million other ways that they could have designed that, but they did that thing that looks just like the Dark Fortress from Power Rangers in Space. So we have the Dusters all come down with the Alturo or Altura Tiger, and we have the Rangers come in and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna save the day for justice," and we have our Rangers needing to call upon the Dragon Blaster, which is this kind of huge cannon weapon, to try to go on and take out the Alturo Tiger and the Dusters. And because the Alturo Tiger had gone on to really kind of toss these Rangers around, and it seems that this monster is to be very strong, and it's to also turn into this uh, truck like vehicle, and it's to run down the Rangers. And so it gets to a point to where the Green Keeper, the Green Ranger, is to take this huge rock and chuck this thing at the tiger, and the tiger's like, "Oh my god, that thing is too big!" And then he gets clocked, and we have this, "Oh yeah, yeah, like the Rangers are doing something awesome." So by the end of all of this, we have the Dragon Blaster or the cannon. After this fight has gone on, to eliminate this threat. But we kind of come to find that most of the characters on the villain side, most of the Dusters on the villain side are to be really immortal, so it's hard to kind of really take them down. So even with this Dragon Blaster, it only takes a real divine artifact to really supposedly kill these characters, but even then, that doesn't seem to be a hard guarantee that that means complete death. And even then, we have to kind of question whether or not that these things are actually dead or not. But here's where we go with this tale. So we come to find that an hour beforehand, before these Dusters and this Alturo Tiger is to make their way into this arena to be supposedly killed by the Dragon Keepers with this Dragon Blaster cannon like weapon. We have, of course, the Dusters who are going on to try and figure out what kind of monster they're going to put out for this week. And so we have some of the Dusters who are kind of listening into the radio to possibly get some kind of hint or clue if they should go on and be some kind of monster for this week. And the announcer is giving them nothing but history and boring stuff, the stuff that this announcer has already gone on and stated in the very beginning of this episode. So the Dusters have absolutely no idea what they're going to do for a monster for this week. And so we have one of the Dusters that's like, aha, I have a plan. And so one of the Dusters ends up drawing this big, huge monster that looks like what they were ultimately going to plan for the monster of the week, but like there's no real details of it. It's just like, here's what it is. And they're like, so we have another Duster that goes on. It's like, oh no, I'm going to make another plan. And so they end up drawing this little cute monster, this little kitten monster, this little cat monster. It's like, oh yeah, I think the audience is going to love this. And one of the Dusters was like, no, like you have to put out a monster that people fear and hate and are afraid of. And so we have the Dusters that are trying to figure out where they're going to go with this. And we, of course, have Duster D, or Fighter D, who's the main character of this story. He ends up, of course, coming in to be like, well, hey, why are we even going on and putting out a monster? Like, you know we're just going to get wiped out anyways. You know we're going to lose. Like, we've lost 998 battles. Like, this is going to be 999. Like, what is the point in all of this? And we come to find that Fighter F, or Duster F, turns to Fighter D and is to say, like, hey man, like, you know what, like, you can say that, yeah, we lose every single time, but there was one time I was to go on and I was to fight against one of the Rangers some time ago, and I was to have a kid turn to me and tell me to, like, hey, do your best, try your best. And Fighter F took that within him and it's like, well, yeah, like, you know what, like, that gave me hope that that kid wanted to, like, see me put on a good show, or also just wanted to see me finally win. And so we have Fighter F that's like, well, hey man, like, you can go on and hate doing this and never want to be a monster all you want, but like, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this, like, and hopefully we're finally going to win against the Power Rangers for once. So that's, of course, where we go on, and we even have the Dusters who are telling, like, Fighter D that he wasn't even supposed to be a part of this show. Like, he was actually supposed to be, like, off duty possibly just going into the arena and just watching the show unfold from there, or just being away and just kind of doing whatever he wanted for the fun of it. But so we again have the Rangers who have gone on to destroy uh, these monsters with this dragon blaster, and out of all of the chaos and all of the uh, dust that has gone on to settle, we come to find that Duster D, or Fighter D, is to be left. So we have the Rangers that are like, well, wait a minute, like they should have all been killed. And like, why is this one Fighter D? Why is he still here? So we have, of course, Fighter D, who goes on to be like, well, hey, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna finally beat you, Rangers. I'm gonna finally show you, Rangers. And so we have Fighter D, who it seems like a missile is going to launch against the Rangers, but instead we just kind of see him like running like a little girl. It's all looking weird. And so the Rangers are like, seriously? Like he's running up against us? And so we go on to have the Red Ranger who's like, hey man, like I got this. Like I'll take care of it. So we go on to have the Red Ranger who is to go on and like he's all like, we are justice and this and that, and like I will slay you, and like he is to be the like the traditional, like he has to put on this hero-ish story. And so we have the Red Ranger who gets closer and closer to Fighter D. And so the Red Ranger goes on and he whispers sweet nothings into this Fighter D to be like, hey, like, you're putting on a good show and good for you, but like, you know, you're going to lose and I'm going to put you in your place. And like, you're going to go down like all of your other friends and go right back up to the fortress like you always do. So we have the Red Keeper that goes on to take down Fighter D, and he vanishes. So we then go on to have by the end of this episode where we have D, who is back to human form, and he is to be on like the roof where this sign is, and we have Yumiko, who is to see that D is now on the roof, and she's like, hey, like, didn't you want to go and see like the show in the arena? And D is like, oh no, like I wanted to see it up from up on high and just kind of get the highest viewpoint that I could. And so we come to find that at the end of all this, we have D, who is to point to the sign of the Dragon Keepers, just be like, well, hey, one day you Rangers are gonna get your comeuppance, and I'm gonna take over the world domination, and this and that. And so we really just have him just kind of like just shaming the Rangers, and that he eventually will get his day in the sun, and kind of that's where we end our first episode. So we come to find, if you of course do not remember from the first episode, we have at one point where D is going on and talking to Sakurama, and Sakurama is like, "Well, hey man, like there is a Rangers exam you can go on and do to become one of us," and D immediately just blows that off. It's like, sure, I'm not gonna be one of you. Then he ends up deciding, it's like, wait a minute, like if I become one of them and infiltrate their environment and like start to pick them up, like that is to be like the grand master plan of it all. So in episode 2 we go on to see, of course, D, who is jogging these supposed 10 laps, going on to see, of course, uh, Ikaben with this megaphone going on and telling, like, hey guys, keep doing it. It's like 10 laps to go. And so we have D, who's kind of looking at all of these kind of junior, low level kind of characters of the Power Rangers, and he's kind of making fun of him. He's like, "What kind of hairstyle is that? Like, what the heck is up with that guy?" And this and that. So we have D, who's going on, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to get those Rangers. I can't wait till I can go on and just figure out who they are and just murder all of them." So we have this going on. We have the whole exam, and so we have, of course, D within the Rangers headquarters, and D is to immediately want to go on and meet the Power Rangers. And he goes on and asks the person behind this desk, he's like this concierge or whatever. He's like, well, hey, this is the Power Rangers headquarters, right? It's like, well, yeah. It's like, so where are they? Where are the Rangers? And the girl's like, yeah, they're not here. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, is this some kind of riddle? Is this like, is there a hint here? It's like, man, can you just not do this and like just tell me where they really are? So we come to find that like D is just kind of wasting his time here, because when he turns around again, his two friends from before that had greeted him in the arena are now going to meet him again within the headquarters. Just be like, hey man, like you must be coming for uh the Rangers exam, right? Like you're gonna come in here and you're gonna like sign up and be a Ranger, because we come to find that Sakurama is to be wearing white. He evidently is wearing white because he is to be kind of part of the Ranger Force, but he hasn't kind of been incorporated in one of the actual like color associations yet. So he's just kind of at a what is the right word? Um he's kind of at a purgatory where, of course, if you are to die, and I guess the afterlife is to not to be able to decide where to send you, either heaven or hell. You're kind of left in purgatory. That's kind of where Sakurama is right now, where it seems that he's kind of in this middle ground, where at some point he will go on and be accepted within a number of these associations at some point. But so we go on to have Sakurama, who is so excited that D is here, possibly to do this exam. He's like hugging on him and all this kind of. And so D is like, man, like you're really close to me. It's like you're touching on me. It's like man, like if only you knew that this body wasn't as uh, durable as yours. So we go on and have Yumiko, who is consistently looking at D and is just kind of examining him, looking at him. It's like, man, like there's something about you. There's like, I don't know what it is, but there's just something about you. So we come to find that Yumiko is to ask D. It's like, well, hey, like, do you want to go ahead and like meet us for food? It's like, I'm sure you haven't eaten anything, right? And like, hey, you want lunch? And so D's like, yeah, of course. So we come to find, while they're heading to that, we have both the Red and Blue Ranger who are making their way to the Dark Fortress via this helicopter. So we come to find that the the Dusters at the Dark Fortress, they're going on and they're doing like tic-tac-toe and whatever, and they all of a sudden find that the Rangers are making their way there, and they're like, oh crap, like something's going on. So both the Red and Blue Ranger have made their way to the fortress, and we have one of the Rangers who is kind of really stressed out. And the Red Ranger is like, hey man, like, just relax. It's like, you remember our peace treaty that we had signed between one another 12 years ago, and we had decided to like side by side coexist. Like, hey man, like, smile, like put her there, buddy. And the Duster's like, I don't want to shake your hand. I don't want to know. I'll just smile because I feel in fear of you, that I have to. But like, what are you here for? So we come to find that both the Red and Blue Ranger are only here to find out the betrayer of the treaty of which they had gone on to sign. They want to find out who the traitor of all these people were, and for that person to come forward. And immediately, since all of the Dusters look the exact same, it's kind of hard to just point that person out. And Red Ranger at some point would go on and say that all the Dusters all look alike. So we have both the Red and Blue Ranger that are just like, well, like, okay, like, because they find out from one of the Dusters that Duster D is not there. And so they're like, well, since he's not arrived yet, like, I'm going to go on and I'm going to give you some kind of guardians, or two kind of third or fourth class uh, characters there to go on and kind of watch over you and make sure that like you're kept in line. And so we have the Dusters that kind of flip their lids because of that, because wait a minute, like not only have you kind of made us slaves, but then also you're taking our privacy from us. Like, you're having these guys like force us to like to live to live our lives and the way they see foot. Like, no, like, this is getting even worse. So we have one of the Dusters who are almost kind of getting up in arms against the Rangers, but one of the Dusters like grabs them, like, no, 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 don't do this. So they come to agreement. It's like, okay, like, we'll have these guys watch over us, and like, we'll just be living our best lives because of it. So back with D, he's going on and eating the steak, and he has never really eaten food before. So he's just like, okay, like, fork with the left hand, uh, knife with the right hand. Like, yeah, this seems simple enough. And he's starting to eat the food, and like, he's tearing the food with his mouth, and so on and so forth. So we come to find that D is looking at the two friends that are amongst him, and he starts to see that they're getting treated well because they are associated with the Ranger Force. And we start to see that they are getting fans that are wanting to take pictures of them. Of course, the little boy that had gotten supposedly saved by Yumiko earlier in the first episode. So we have this kind of fan base coming from even the chefs of this restaurant to give them some free food. Like, hey, for all the hard work that you guys are doing, like, you guys deserve this. And so we have at points in time where like D is trying to talk to his friends here, and it's to try to tell him, it's like, well, hey, like, uh the Rangers versus the Dusters, that is all an act. And Yumiko is just like, oh no, like, you're talking about the conspiracy that is going around, that is some kind of just some charade, right? Like, but that's not really real. And D's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. the conspiracy going around that it's all a ruse. Yeah, yeah. So D goes on and is to see like how well his friends are being treated, and it's like, man, if things were on the other foot, man, like you'd be licking my boots right now. So D goes on and is to have his friends go off to their own missions. We are to supposedly have Yumiko that is to be needing to hand off a letter to the Red Ranger. And so that, of course, has Sakurama going on to his own mission, his own thing. So we have D who decides to take this picture from, of course, this little boy and turn himself into Sakurama to join with Yumiko to make his way to this Red Squadron garrison to try and infiltrate into this garrison to find the the Red Ranger and to kill him. So we have D that follows Yumiko as Sakurama, and so from here on out, I'm going to be calling D Sakurama until eventually he turns back into D here. So that way, to avoid some confusion of who is who and what is what. So, with that said, we have Yumiko who is talking to Sakurama and making their way into the garrison. And so we have Yumiko who is saying that Sakurama is acting so strange. And so the further and further that we get into the garrison, we come to find a character named Shun. And so Shun is mocking Sakurama here. And we have Shun asking why Sakurama is even here. And plus, like, Shun is treating Sakurama like a less than because he has no gang color, so to speak. He's not in the red, he's not in the blue, he's not in the pink, he's not in the green, yellow, blah, 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 blah. So we have Shun going on and asking, like, well, hey, like, Sakurama, like, what were you going to do? Because we, of course, have Sakurama who is kind of pulling at this little uh, this little kind of box that he has off to the side of his little belt, and within that belt, we come to find is to be the letter for the Red Ranger that Yumiko is to have. But then there is also a knife present within that little pouch, within that little box-ish like thing. That at some point we have Sakurama who's wanting to whip out to kill whoever possibly is the Red Ranger. We even have Sakurama who asks, like, well, hey, like, where is the Red Ranger? Like, who is the Red Ranger? And we, of course, have Shun who's like, well, hey, I am the Red Ranger. And Yumiko is like, no, 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 like, you're definitely not the Red Ranger. Like, if anything, like, you're ranked high, but you're not the Red Ranger. Because obviously there is a poster that goes on and is to tell you who the Red Ranger actually is, or who the identity of he is, and we will see that shortly after they leave after talking to Shun. And so we of course have Sakurama who gives Shun the letter to the Red Ranger, and we have Shun who's like, oh, okay, well, I will deliver this letter. It's like, okay, great that you'll do that. So both Yumiko and both Sakurama are leaving this area, and we come to find that Sakurama is seeing the poster that is to showcase who the Red Ranger is, and all of a sudden we then have the Red Ranger walking to make his way into the garrison, and we have Sakurama who's like, oh my god, here is my chance. So we have Sakurama that is to go on and really desperately grab on to his little pouch to try to get the knife out to stab the Red Ranger. And so we have Sakurama who's like, hey, yeah, Red Ranger. He's trying to get into some kind of dialogue with the Red Ranger so he can continue to talk with him so that way he can go on and eventually stab into him and kill him. But Yumiko is consistently trying to pull Sakurama away, further and further away from the Red Ranger, to where now Sakurama is saying a bunch of praises to uh, Akabe, who is the Red Ranger, of course, because he's out of costume. So we have Sakurama who's going on and saying like, well, hey, yeah, uh, like you did a really great job against those monsters, and uh, like thank you for all of your hard work and this and that and whatever have you. And like we have Akabe who's like, well, hey, like I appreciate your good work too. And so like Akabe walks off, and Yumiko ends up pulling Sakurama away. And so Yumiko ends up figuring out like something is going on with this guy. Like something is wrong about him. Like something is not close to Sakurama. So we have Yumiko who finally pulls this guy aside. It's like, you know what, like there's something really off about you, and I think I figured out. I think I put my finger on it. And so like Yumiko ends up asking like what was in Sakurama's pouch, and we go on to have Sakurama who is to pull out this knife. And so we're to be like, okay, like cover's blown. And so we come to find that Yumiko ends up taking this knife and slicing the head off of D. And so that forces D to come back to its true form, which is to be this kind of skullish like face form ish like thing. And so we have Yumiko, instead of going on and figuring out a way to kill said Duster, instead Yumiko is to take this knife upon the Duster and kind of slice into him numerous times to the point to where D is willing to have a just like, hey, can we talk this out kind of moment. So Yumiko ends up taking the knife to the Duster, and she is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm sure you want to go on and finally beat the Dragon Keepers, right? And D's like, uh huh. And Yumiko is like, well, hey, like, I will join you. I'm like, what? I'm like, Yumiko, who has kind of been second in command of the Yellow Ranger, she's going on and turning her back on him to, like, create this whole story of her just kind of just taking down the whole thing from the inside, and she's asking a Duster to help her. Like, this is awesome. And so we come to find that Sakurama ends up interrupting this whole dialogue, this whole discussion, and Sakurama is mentioning like, hey, like Yumiko, there seems to be a monster threat happening in town. And we have D who's like, wait a minute, like, this makes no sense. Like, it's not even Sunday. And we have everybody running off, and we come to find that the actual threat is just one of the fighters who has just kind of been cut loose. we find that Fighter F is to make his way around town trying to figure out possibly where Fighter D is so he could possibly save him from a possible future death sentence if Fighter D is to return to the fortress. So Fighter F is trying to locate where possibly the where his friend is, and we come to find that Fighter F has just made his way into being met by Shun and his gun, his laser gun. And so we have Shun who goes on and starts firing uh, laser upon laser of of hitting Fighter F, and we of course have the Ranger Force who's kind of backing him up. It's like, okay, like what are we gonna do to figure out a way to beat this guy? Because we got to go on and kind of defend our planet if a Ranger does not go on and show, which of course one does. So we have a Cobbane who ends up having to transform right in front of our very eyes instead of needing to morph, uh, seemingly like any ranger would commonly do in privacy. No, like since everybody seems to know who the rangers are within this universe, like we can just have the Power Rangers just morph to get themselves out of danger within this situation. So we have now the Red Keeper who is facing off against this Fighter F, and we come to find that the Red Keeper is going on to get the divine artifact to, and it's to be this kind of bone sword weapon looking thing. And so we come to find that this artifact is to go on and wipe out Fighter F to have left this seemingly arm that is to have been cut off. And so we have both Fighter D, or we have D, and we have both Sakurama who are to make their way to Fighter F just as he's getting slayed here. And so we have Fighter F who is going on and kind of having this kind of last thoughts moment, and to have realized it's like, well, yeah, I guess I am getting slayed here. I guess I am getting killed here. But it's like, well, hey, like I tried my best, and like this is the best I could do. Uh, with especially me just being kind of a low level villain, and so fighter or so D is to call out for Fighter F, and he ends up getting killed, and so we have D who's just kind of saddened that seemingly a close friend, possibly of his, is dead. So we then, within the next episode, have 12 years ago, we have the Dragon Keepers who are to go on and to have been at uh, the fortress. And so all the Rangers are to go on to talk to the Dusters and to go on and tell them, it's like, well, hey, like, letting you know now that your bosses are all dead and you're the only ones that are left. So how about we make a truce to coexist and put her there, Dusters? And so we go on to, of course, have uh, Sakurama, who is to talk to D here, and is to mention, it's like, well, hey, uh, like, I'm sorry for your loss. Was that a good friend of yours? And D is like, well, what are you talking about? And Sakurama is like, well, yeah, I overheard you and Yumiko talking because while the two of you were talking, like, I was just walking by and I heard everything. And Sakurama is like, well, hey, um, I will not let good triumph over evil. It's like you need to stop your evil doing ways and this and that. And so we have D going on, and he's like, the more and more that Sakurama's talking, the more like D is just like, this isn't a good moment for you to go on and say all this crap to me. And D goes on and ends up telling like Sakurama, it's like, you know what, I hate you, and you'll never become a Power Ranger. And we have, of course, D who ends up kind of just dusting away. So we have Sakurama and both Yumiko that both know that D is a duster, but it seems that neither one of them are going to say a thing to the Power Rangers to even get like cool party points or whatever. Like, no, they're just gonna go on and keep playing up the charade. And we even come to find that Sakurama has his own entire story of him wanting to possibly turn his back on the Power Rangers also, which ends up being really intriguing. It's really, really cool. So we now realize that these define artifacts are really important to the Power Rangers. And so, what better way to have these important items taken away from every single one of them to be used against them and possibly have the evil side win? Excuse me. So, we have, of course, Yumiko and both D, who are both having a pancake breakfast together, and we would go on to have Yumiko, who is to have this Grandmaster plan. It's like, well, hey, like, if those divine artifacts are so important to those Rangers, how about we figure out a way to steal it from them? And so D is like, oh yeah, like, if we go on and we like steal these artifacts while they're sleeping and kill them, like, that's the plan. And Yumiko's like, I don't think it'll be that easy, but like, hey, that is pretty clever. But so Yumiko is like, well, hey, like, what if I can go on and tell you exactly where to go to get these things? And so D is like, well, yeah, like, that sounds like a plan. So we have, of course, D that is to be looking at a comic or comic book, a newspaper that has Akabe's face on it, or Akabe's face on it, or Akabe's face on it, and so the Red Keeper. So we have D who's going on and mimicking what Akabe looks like, so he can sneak into the garrison or the fortress or the arena or whatever this location ends up being to kind of finish us up into this episode. So we have D who's mimicking this other person's face, and we of course have some hilarity ensue in here with Yumiko going like, "Man, like, you're taking forever to mimic this person's face," but it seems like that ends up also having her praise the fact that uh, this character can go on and kind of mimic um, and be able to be whoever that this person really wants to be. And we would of course have D who's like, well, yeah, that's my special ability. We also come to find, especially when D is gonna have that story with Sakurama, like, all the other things that this duster can actually do as far as mimic goes. And I was like, wow, this is actually really amazing how at some point the duster can have, like, for its arm, it can turn into a cat, like kind of puppet like thing, or it can go on and take a part of it and give it to somebody because we of course have Sakurama who ends up asking for, like, well, hey, can I have a mask that kind of looks like you, what your true form really is? And so he's like, oh yeah, and so he gives him like this little thing to have him like have this little like mask, and it's kind of cool. So, but then he does all these other stuff that eventually is this kind of cool mimic thing. So we have D, who is now Akabane, and so now for the rest of the story, I'll go on and call D Akabane because that's who he is, or Akabane, uh, Akabane. So that's probably how I'm going to pronounce it, and I don't even know if that's right. So we have Akabane make it into this arena, I think it is, and so we are to be supposed that the Rangers are waiting for the arena for monsters to show up. So Akabe is going on to find out where he's supposed to go because he has this little kind of Bluetooth thing where he's getting guided by Yumiko, and we of course go on to have D or Akabe who's asking Yumiko is like, how do you know exactly where this divine artifact is? And Yumiko is like, well, hey, call a woman's intuition. It's like you're just dodging the question. And so the more and more we have Yumiko that has her own agenda because she is to have gone on and seen like some teenage drama. And it seems that she is to quite possibly want to eventually find her lover in the end of all of this story, and that there might be someone who is conflicting with that for her to be able to find her love. And so, like, really, more than likely, Yumiko may really have fallen in love with D, and maybe she wants to get the Power Rangers out of the way for Yumiko to really just find D to be like her lover, maybe in the end. Or maybe Yumiko has fallen in love with any number of either Power Rangers or other other people it may have seemed at some point in the story. So, or maybe Yumiko is to have fallen in love with Sakurama. I don't know. Could be any number of things. But so we go on to have Akabe, who again is to have D be re-met up with Shun, who is going on and talking to him. So Shun is talking to Akabe and like, well, hey, like, you're back so soon? And Akabe is like, well, yeah, I forgot my artifact. And so while Akabe is trying to get back into his room, while Shun is talking to him, we go on to just be like, well, hey, like, Shun is just talking about the thrash mob, and is talking about the monsters and this and that, and Akabe is trying to keep his cool, and is to like, well, hey, yeah, like, maybe someday, uh, like, I'll need your bravery and this and that, and just trying to figure out a way how for him to just talk his way out of this conversation to get in the room of the artifact that he really needs. So we come to find that the artifact is in nowhere of anything of real importance. We come to find that the divine artifact that is supposed to be this key weapon to have killed these monsters is just shoved away in this like like uh bucket that has a bunch of golf clubs in it. And so we come to find that D is so upset by the fact that this is to be just some, like, it's not like put in some vault somewhere stored away for like a rainy day. No, like it's out in the open. Like anybody could just come over and grab this thing and just be like, hey, look what I found. And D has gone on to do that. And D is even kind of paranoidly like think that there has to be some kind of like trap here, that like maybe all these people are actually turning against him, and this is to all be some kind of shenanigans. Well, we come to find that Shun has kind of, excuse me, um Shun has really started to possibly piece together that this is not a Kabane. And so Shun goes on to uh, blast D, and D ends up getting knocked backwards. So we have Shun who goes on and continue to blast uh, D here, and we of course now have this standoff because there is to be the artifact on the ground, and so we come to find that Shun is to take the artifact and it's to be like, okay, like any last words? And we have D who's like, well, hey, I have dynamite. And Shun's like, wait a minute, what? And D is like, yeah, I have dynamite. And if you use that weapon against me, I'm blowing things sky high, buddy. So Shun is like, well, maybe you should have started with that. And so he drops the weapon. And so that now leaves with Shun trying to bargain here, trying to weasel his way out of this. And we then come to have, of course, uh, D turn around, take this golf club, and beat Shun to death with it. And is to then go on and is to take the divine artifact. So we now have D who is kind of crawling his way through this ventilation shaft to now make his way onto the rooftop where he is to possibly just get out of here. We have D who's going on and hearing Yumiko kind of give him all this praise and tell him that he did all this good job. And D is like, God, I'm hating that this girl is buttering me up so much, because it's like, man, as soon as like we're all good and done here, like I am deuces with this woman. Like I want nothing to do with her after this is said, done, and over with. So D wanks his way onto this rooftop to be met by the Red Ranger, and D is like, well, Yumiko, like, we're gonna have to call this conversation because I'm a little busy here. So we then go on to have D, who is facing off against the Red Ranger here, and we come to find that the Red Ranger is kind of injured from the tiger fight from a week ago. But then also we have D assuming that there's not gonna be a real fight between the two of them because there's no audience here. There's no nothing to capture all of this. And the Red Ranger is, of course, the Red Ranger is to, of course, turn around and just be like, well, for that you would be wrong. So we would kind of find that this helicopter is flying around with this camera crew and the announcer. It's like, well, hey, like, here's where the fight is really happening. So we come to find that the Red Ranger is now like, aha, like, I got you cornered. So we now have also, like, the Red Ranger is kind of setting up the story between the two of them fighting, but then also we find that he is fallen back because he is injured, but he turns to the fighter and it's to be like, well, hey, I'm not fighting alone. So because we go on to have, of course, uh, D, who is to have lost his arm while fighting the Red Ranger, while like D was trying to hit him or kick him, and the Ranger kind of dodges everything like Neo from the Matrix, and we get to a point where uh, D loses his arm, and it ends up being attached to this water tower, and the Red Ranger's like, oh, like where was to go your arm? And D is like, well, hey, like, uh, I'm going to reattach it as well as bring down the thing that it is attached, my hand is attached to. So this water tower ends up flying to supposedly make its way to the Red Ranger, and the Red Ranger is to have grabbed this like lead pipe and is to just be like, hey, this reminds me of um, school when I used to play baseball. He's like, all right, like this looks like a big meatball. And so the Red Ranger takes this pipe and he swings it like a bat, and he cracks this ball into a home run, and it just goes on to like fire back onto uh, D and kind of take some of his head off. So we still have D who is missing an arm, and he D ends up being forced to then kind of make his way back or double back to try and get his arm and the artifact from falling to the ground. And so when D comes back, we find that like he's kind of one arming, getting his way back onto this rooftop to face against the Rangers, and he's like, "Aha! I have this artifact! Ha ha ha! Like you guys are gonna get killed because I have this weapon here." So we of course have the Red Ranger who's like, "Well, hey man, like I don't fight alone." We come to find that the Blue Ranger is to have made his way swinging in to face off against uh, the Duster or D. So we come to find that the blue rain blue keeper is to have his own artifact, and we go on to have the Blue Ranger who's going to go on and take D out supposedly. So we have, of course, the Rangers all of a sudden they're talking to one another and they're huddled together, and they're like, well, hey, like hasn't this kind of become way too routine? Like, shouldn't we figure out a way to like kind of spice up this story and to try to make it different so that way like it keeps the viewers interested? And so they're trying to figure out how to get out of their routine and this and that. And so eventually they figure it out how to make it like a different kind of story. So and to also like force the Duster into surrendering. So excuse me. So the Duster disagrees to that. I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting very late in the day in my eyes, and I eventually will probably as soon as this video is over, I will freaking head to bed. Um, but I'm sorry, like it gets to where like when I always do these videos, it's kind of very later than I probably should have because there's just so much going on in my day. Um, my apologies. So we have the Rangers who are like, okay, like we figured out a way to beat this guy, and so as the Blue Keeper is to make an attack for his artifact, we come to find that D has now kind of really blown up into this big blue balloon. And we're like, okay, so D is dead now? Like he's been killed by the Blue Ranger? And we also have the Red Ranger assuming that the Red Ranger's divine artifact has kind of fallen out of D's hands. And so the Red Ranger's like, oh yeah, I'll just kind of pick up my sword and we'll kind of walk out of here. So the Red Ranger picks up what he thinks is his artifact just to find out that this artifact thing is just a sham. And so the Red Ranger has to go on and realize that D had gone on and made a fake artifact, and the Red Ranger is like, oh my god, like, this monster has my artifact with him. So I was like, oh man, another twist of this story. So we go on to have Yumiko, who is to have been the one to have gotten the actual Red Ranger's artifact, and we have her kind of have this like shrine of it, and she's like D, your sacrifice will be all for naught, and like this will be the one chess move that'll be like the pawn to eventually get bigger moves going to finally be the downfall of the Rangers. And like right then and there, I'm thinking like, oh, is D, is he dead? Like, are they gonna go on and just like, is any number of the other Rangers going, or any of the other Rangers, or any of the other Dusters going to have a story here? But it's like, no, like in the fourth episode, we continue on with the same fighter D, and he has still more story to tell. But Yumiko is either way saying like, okay, we have like one artifact, it's like four more to go. So in episode 4, we are back at the Rangers headquarters with the banquet room, or the banquet area, because the Rangers are putting on a banquet, and here's where things get really dark. So we come to find that Yumiko has made it late to this banquet meeting, and we have the Blue Ranger who's very upset with Yumiko, like making them wait on her. And so the Blue Ranger wants her to apologize, and Yumiko is like, I'm not doing that. Like, no. Why would I do that? So we have the Blue Ranger that it's yelling at the Yellow Ranger. It's like, well, hey, like, get your people in line. And the Yellow Ranger's like, well, hey, like, Yumiko, like, I've already like told her that she can do things at her pace and this and that. And Yumiko is telling the Blue Ranger, it's like, well, hey, like, you're going on and you're calling me a mistress to the Yellow Ranger. It's like, well, hey, like, there's plenty of other like rangers who have their own buddies that have gone on and done like a number of things. So like the Yellow Ranger and you are no different. And that goes on and like creates this fight between both uh the Blue Ranger and uh Izome, who is to be his kind of second in command. And it seems like they were having something possibly going on between the two of them. And so the Blue Ranger and Asome are just kind of having an argument. which all of a sudden brings in Draggy-kun, who is to be this mascot, and this mascot is telling him like, "Oh no, hey, no, 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 like, don't fight between all of you, like you're all on the same side here." And we have the Blue Ranger that is just taking the Dragon Coon, and he's just squeezing and just twisting and turning. It's like, man, if I could just wipe you out. So we have the Red Ranger who's like, hey man, let's just all relax. Like, come on, we all came here for. Let's go ahead and let's all just like finally dig in. Let's eat because we're all here. So we have the Red Ranger who's like, you know what? Like, let me go on and let me tell all you guys that I made a goof and like I had lost my divine artifact. Ha ha ha! Isn't that funny? And so we have Hurama that is looking at the Red Ranger. It's like, well, hey, like, wait a minute, like, that is not some small feat or like trinket that you have lost here. It's like that is a key thing. That is a key fight in us winning the day against these monsters. And maybe because you have gone on to lose that, like maybe you should resign from being the Red Ranger. So the Red Ranger's like, you know what? You're right. Like, like, you know what I should do? Like, since you are my second in command, like, I should turn around and I should give you this power of being the Red Ranger. And Harama is like, yes, like, ever since I was a child, I've hoped for this moment. And then all of a sudden we have the Red Ranger who takes Harama and smashes him against this wall, choking and killing him. And the Red Ranger is like, well, yeah, I guess you weren't strong enough this day, so I'm not going to grant you my powers because you just weren't strong enough, and now you're dead. So we go on to have the Red Ranger who's making his way back to his food, and he's full with blood upon the wall behind him also, and he's just gonna go on and just continue to eat. Yeah, like this food is just filled with blood on it also, but he's just like, you know, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this delicious meal. And it's like, oh my god. So we turn around and we have Sakurama, and he is watching the footage of the Rangers going up against D and the possible explosion that they have witnessed, assuming that D has died. And Sakurama is like, you know what? I'm gonna gamble against that explosion and say that D is still alive somehow or another, and I need to go find out where he is. So we also have the Blue Ranger who is talking to um Hekuru Hekuru Hekuru. I'm not. These names are very hard to pronounce. So the Blue Ranger is talking to Hekuru, and he is mentioning that there could be a certain number of outcomes that have happened with the loss of this divine artifact. That there's a possibility that the Duster could have kind of flown away with the wind, or there's a possibility that the Duster could be back at the Dark Fortress. So Hekuru is to possibly kind of sniff or whiff out where this uh, possible Duster had gone. So we then have D, who we find is in the woods somewhere with a hole in his chest, and he is to be met by Sakurama, who is to go on and try to nurse him back to health and give him first aid. And D is like, well, hey, that's not how my body works. Like, I have a hole in my chest, and like, I got to figure out how to like be able to fill this hole. And so we go on to have Sakurama. It's like, well, hey, since you can like mimic anything, like, well, can't you just go on and like take a part of you and just fill that hole? And D is like, well, yeah, you know what? That actually is a really good idea. The only problem with that is, it's like, like I would have to really go on and kind of figure out how to best heal that. So D goes on to like try and figure out a way to like take a little piece from his arm to fill that hole, but it still hurts. Like, it still um, like doesn't work properly, and so we all of a sudden have like some comedy moments here where we have D who is going on and turning to Sakurama. It's like, well, hey, like, why do you have this first aid with you? Like, why are you here? Like, why are you trying to help me? And Sakurama is like, well, you know what? I have a story of a tale of when I was a young kid, and I'm going to give you the reason why I'm going to go on and and uh, and to help you now. And D is going on about like, wait a minute, like, you're gonna tell me a story, like please don't go on and tell me a story. I don't want to know your story. Like, I don't really like you all that much. Like, don't tell me this story. And Sakurama is like, I'm going to tell you this story, and D's like, well, I guess you're gonna like do whatever you want, regardless if I tell you I don't want a story. So Sakurama, we come to find as a young child, was to have a sister and a mother and father. We come to find out that Sakurama's father hated the Power Rangers, because we come to find out that uh, that Sakurama is to talk to his sister, and when his sister is to sneak out late at night to possibly see the Dark Fortress or the possible things within inside of it, and young Sakurama is like worried about, like, well, hey, like, these monsters could come out at any moment and attack us. And we have Sakurama's sister who turns to him. It's like, well, hey, like uh like you you don't believe like dad, and like you're kind of going against what dad believes. So we also have Sakurama, who's consistently watching the Power Rangers, and and of course Sakurama is rooting for the Power Rangers, and we have him even quote something that the Red Ranger had gone on to say, and had said that against his sister. So we come to find out, while Sakurama is watching even more Power Rangers, that his father is in disgust of the Power Rangers, because it's like, well, yeah, like, they brought this chaos onto this town with their violence against these monsters, or supposed monsters. And so we have Sakurama's father that is completely against the Power Rangers and calling them savages. So eventually we come to find some god had come from out of this dark fortress. They just call him God or Angel or something. And so we go to this church. And so this church is having this priest inside of it, and is talking to everybody. It's like, well, hey, like, like the time is now. We have finally come to a point where we can rejoice and this and that. And everybody's like, "What are you talking about?" Because it's like a god has arrived here, and so we come to find that this god-like character is to make its way through this church and kill everyone inside of it. And so we are now left with uh, Sakurama and his sister, and it seems that within the battle, we come to find that this god had uh, broken the legs of Sakurama's sister, and so Sakurama is looking at his sister, and his sister is in great pain, but she's very happy that Sakurama has kind of gotten out of this unharmed with a couple of scrapes and minor wounds. And so Sakurama's sister is telling him, it's like, well, hey, you should run, you should get out of here. As this godlike monster is like, well, hey, like, um, I'm sorry to have caused you any pain. Like, I'll make the rest of this quick, as if to say that, like, hey, I'm gonna kill you all right now. And so we come to find that Sakurama was to have hoped that there was going to be some ranger that ends up showing up and saving the day, but no one ever came. And so Sakurama ended up having to run away from his own sister to save his own skin. So immediately after this whole story is over, and we have Sakurama's finally done with his story, we have D who ends up turning around and saying, like, the story is too long. The story was worse because it was horrible because it was long. Like, you had a long story that sucked. So I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was a really good joke. So we then have um, Hikuru that ends up showing up, and he's like, "Man, I have leaves all over me, and like I'm so just so sweaty, and like this is awful." And like he can't just wait to get back home. So Hikuru ends up making further and further into the forest, and then finds Sakurama, and Hikuru is like, "Well, hey, you didn't happen to find like a duster on your journeys, did you?" And Sakurama's like, "Well, yeah, like I ended up capturing one." And so Sakurama is trying to uh, take this other guy onto that's working with the Blue Ranger, like on another path to get away from, uh, of course, uh, the duster. So we come to find that the further and further away Sakurama and this guy gets, the Duster figures out a way to kind of come back around to possibly like, hey man, like I'm gonna fight this guy. I'm gonna fight Hikuru. So when the Duster is to go on and is to face off against Hikuru, Hikuru then whips out uh, this divine artifact replica, and it is to be the blue dragon Leviathan, it seems. So I'm like, all right, like we come to find that there's like even replicas of this weapon. And so like we're getting a lot of variety here. We're getting a lot of huge variety. So we have this weapon and it looks very much like a scythe. And so we come to find that Hikuru is like blasting this scythe through this forest, knocking down all these trees. So we go on to have D, who's jumping around, and he's trying to figure out a way to avoid this weapon and its blast. And so within this forest, we have this villain who is kind of very worn down and very just sweaty and whatever, who is desperate to just have this fight be over and wanting this monster to just come and face him so he can take this replica weapon to murder him. So we go on to, of course, finally have D, who is to have disguised himself as a tree to get the pounce on Hikuru, but we still come to find that Hikuru has an unusual amount of power via the grade of which that he is to be at. But we come to find that Hikuru had borrowed some power from the Blue Ranger, as well as also had the power of bonds, because it seems that his friends and the Blue Ranger were all like really relying on him, and they're all good friends, and they're all real, honest, good, hardworking people. And so the bonds of power have just made Hiruku Hikuru very strong, bizarrely. So even for the level which that he is to have been at. So we come to find that uh, D is to use Sakurama as a shield, and we have, of course, uh, a moment where the artifact is to be like, okay, well, I'm going to surrender my artifact to save Sakurama. And Sakurama ends up taking the artifact and slicing into D, who we end up finding out is not actually D, it's actually Sakurama, and Sakurama is actually D. And so we come to find Hikuru, who's going on this helicopter or this plane, and he's flying off with Hikuru, and like this is their grandmaster plan all along to, I'm assuming, get Sakurama to possibly work with the Red Ranger and them to probably use this artifact against the Red Ranger. I'm assuming is probably the next plan. I'm not sure. It doesn't exactly say. But then, so we have afterwards uh, the both of them, uh, both Sakurama and D, who are talking this whole plan out and like saying it's like, well, hey, like uh, Hikuru is not going to be like a force to be reckoned with. So D, since you can't go on and just easily beat this guy, like we have to come up with this plan, and that's how kind of this after credit almost thing is basically like. So with that said, I'm gonna go on and get out of here so I can put this video out for you guys to watch, and also it's probably gonna take a while for me to upload. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here because also the video is probably taking way too long for me to talk about all this. And then also, like, I didn't stop at any moment to give you my little like thoughts or like moments, but everything is just like, yeah, oh, yeah, like every bit of whatever I was gonna say, like to stop in between. Like, there wasn't one part where I felt like there was a like a point where I could say like something to like naysay against this story, but everything was to go on and just be like, if there were to have been a stopping gap, I would have been like, yeah, like this is awesome, like this is great, this is great storytelling, the twists and turns that this story goes into, it's freaking amazing. And there was not one lick of story that could have gone on throughout these 4 episodes and just been like, wait a minute, like this doesn't make sense, or I could have come up with a like a counter uh think of how like because no, everything flowed pretty well. Um, where everything was like all the twists and turns of it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly loved it. But maybe someone could go on and not feel that way. So regardless, I'm gonna go on and just be like, hey man, I'm loving this, and hopefully someone will too. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.